Let me just say, most Americans have no clue that Sharia is being insinuated in any of these institutions of our civil society, let alone into our courts. What's wrong with this picture? Anybody been in the TSA line lately?
Oh, yeah.
This is one of my favorite photographs. This is the director of the FBI, who earlier this year declared to a gaggle of Muslim brothers that he had purged something on the order of 700 documents and 300 briefings from the files and materials used to train FBI agents in how to defeat what they call violent extremists. So this image is what I think is left of our counterterrorism capabilities as a result. That's the flag that used to fly over the U.S. Embassy in Cairo being defiled and replaced by the black flag of Jihad. This was the next day in the Rose Garden, where the president got up and spoke at some length, actually quite misleadingly, about the attack that had taken place in Libya. How about this? At the UN General Assembly, the President of the United States said, and I quote, "The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam." If that sounds a little familiar, it's because it is exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood, and by the way, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban, and Jamaat Islamiyah, and all these other cats are telling us we cannot do. What is Sharia? Sharia is literally the path. Some say the path to the watering hole. It is truly comprehensive, utterly totalitarian, and certainly supremacist. The law of the land in Saudi Arabia, where this photograph is taken. This is pretty grisly, but it makes a point. This is a picture that actually appeared on the cover of Time magazine. A woman who has had her nose severed by her husband, who was within his rights under Sharia to do that. Sharia tells its adherents they will rule the world. And they must engage in jihad in order to bring that about. This is not about religion.
That's right.
This is really about power. You can bet they are lying to you. There's actually a term for this practice. It's called taqiyya. Taqiyya literally translates into lying for the faith. And by the way, it is not simply something that you can do if it will advance the cause of the faith. You are obliged to do it. These are the goals of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have been the goals since 1928, when it was founded in Egypt. They are unchanging. Oh, that's interesting. Those are exactly the same goals as Al-Qaeda. Can you believe it? The top intelligence officer of the United States government, a former 3-star general by the name of James Clapper, now the Director of National Intelligence, actually testified before the House Intelligence Committee in February of last year that the Muslim Brotherhood was, quote, a largely secular organization. The mission of the Muslim Brotherhood in America is, quote, a civilization jihadist process, a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within, sabotaging its miserable house with their hands, meaning ours, and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated. And God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Let me just say, most Americans have no clue that Sharia is being insinuated in any of these institutions of our civil society, let alone into our courts. Because it's sort of topical, let me start with this guy and his administration. We've got 7 people that we've identified. There are more, but we've done dossiers on these 7. This lady you may have heard a bit about, Homa Abedin, the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Secretary of State. Homa Abedin's family is in a business established by a top Muslim brother by the name of Abdullah Omar Nassif, who happens also to be a top funder of Al-Qaeda. Abedin is one of Clinton's most trusted advisors on the Middle East. When Clinton hosts meetings on the region, Abedin's advice is always sought. How about this cat? You may not have heard of him, Rashad Hussain. Rashad Hussain is, as they like to say, the president's special envoy to an organization you may or may not have ever heard of, called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. But when the president announced his appointment to the OIC, he boasted that this guy would be very welcome in this community because he is a Hafiz of the Quran. Anybody know what that means?
Yeah.
Hafiz of the Quran is, as the president say, a respected member of the community because he's memorized every word of the book. I may be overreaching here. I kind of think you're into it if you do that. This lovely lady is an advisor to the president on Muslim affairs, working in the White House. Has her own ties to various Muslim Brotherhood operations, but she also has as her day job working for the Gallup organization. And that's particularly helpful because, as you may have heard a little bit about lately, skewed polls. Well, you write the questions, or you skew the sample, or you just make it up, cook the books, and then you turn around and say, well, this is what Muslims think. She actually wrote a book about what 1 billion Muslims think. Then there's this guy. Attractive figure. Anybody remember the old blind sheikh? Guy who tried to blow up the World Trade Center the first time and very nearly succeeded. And think about this. There's now talk of acceding to this guy's demand that we release this fellow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've recently been treated to a report or two about what happens when these bad guys are let out of Guantanamo Bay, for example, that we're thinking now was responsible for killing our ambassador, or at least organizing the attack, was released from Gitmo. I'm sorry to say it wasn't by Barack Obama, it was by George W. Bush. He is a jihadist of the first order because he brings clerical authority to his orders that people engage in jihad. That face ring a bell? His name is Grover Norquist. Many of you in this room may know him, may revere him for his work on taxes. Certainly may regard him as one of the preeminent conservative movement leaders. And to be perfectly honest with you, I wouldn't necessarily have believed what I'm going to tell you about him myself if it hadn't been for another act of providence, which was that I sublet office space from this guy for 7 biblically long years. During which time I had an opportunity to watch what he was doing with this guy to help him and these guys, this look a little similar to what I showed you earlier, get into bed with this guy. Initially in the campaign, subsequently after he was elected in the White House. This was a photograph taken in Austin at the governor's mansion in May of 2000. This is Khalid Safouri, Alamudi's right-hand man, who took over the Islamic Free Market Institute that Grover started with Alamudi. And here he is at the governor's mansion in that same setting with his friend and boss, Alamudi. His name is Nihat Awad. Several of you resonated to the Council on American Islamic Relations, one of the most aggressive Muslim Brotherhood fronts. He founded it. He still runs it as its executive director. Here he is with George W. Bush at the Islamic Society of Washington right after 9/11. when George W. Bush was importuned to come and show that he didn't have any problem with Muslims. He was surrounded literally by Muslim brothers. This guy is one of the most dangerous imams in the United States. Muzamil Siddiqui ran many of the top Muslim Brotherhood operations, including the Islamic Society of North America. Here you have him in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, presenting President Bush with a Quran, which prompted the president to say, Islam is a religion of peace. The teachings of the Quran are about peace and good. Suhail Khan. Some of you who were active in Republican circles may have come across him. I was down in Houston talking to a group that the King Street Patriots put together for me, and I heard an interesting story from its founder, Catherine Engelbrecht, who I hope you know for what she's doing on True the Vote. She said Suhail Khan had come to her and said that if she were willing to make the King Street Patriots more inclusive, he could drive a lot of money their direction. That is a Muslim Brotherhood penetration and influence operation at work. And my question is this. I know these guys are working to get into a similar deal with the candidate today that they had with the candidate in 2000. And I think that is exceedingly dangerous.